I would like to introduce another Carey School alumni, Larry Peterson, in his Panther Points of Pride video.
Larry Peterson. I'm 84 in a couple days. My parents was John and or Deke and Florence Peterson, and I live in Carey, graduated in Carey, and loved this little community. And Muldoon. Went to school in Muldoon a little bit.
You did?
Oh yeah, my folks was in the sheep business, and that's where it all started up there. And so when they would come out of Muldoon in the fall, everybody'd come with them with the sheep. And of course they'd take me out of school up there and put me in Carey. And that was kind of scary. And up there, you know, all four of us lived in a sheep camp. My brother and I, we slept at the foot of the bed, and of course the folks slept at the head of the bed. And my dad, he slept back in the back where he could kick my mother out of bed to put another log on the fire when it got cold. And it took a lot of logs on the fire, you know. That was a war, a fun war. Yeah, it was quite a thing. And then we had come to Carey, and at that time, the folks bought their home place over here, the old homestead, from on the Evans side, the family, on my mother's side. And we'd lamb sheep there or on this place where we're sitting here, the Nissen Ranch. If they had hay available, if they didn't, they had to take those sheep where the hay was available. And that was back when they had loose hay before the baler. So they ended up in Richfield quite often, I think, and well, I know they did some years. And they'd buy a stack of loose hay, set up their sheds, believe it or not, and lamb them sheep out and live in the sheep camp. And then head out in the spring, and when they headed out, why they'd have to board my brother and I out with a family here in Carey. And that was usually the Coates family. And it was a chicken house I think we lived in. It was out on Paul Olson's property up next to the hill there, just above Lee Cook's place. And the old Hot Springs place, we stayed in that place and been boarded out. And when the sheep got to Muldoon, and we could, why we'd share between there and the school until school was out with the folks. It was kind of a lonesome time without the folks, but that was our life. No, they trailed them.
That's what I.
Oh yeah, they trailed. Yeah, in fact, that's when they trailed sheep from Muldoon. They'd trail a whole band into Bellevue. They had a nice stockyard there. They'd separate the lambs from the ewes, the ones they wanted to ship, and trail the ewes back to Muldoon for pasture. Yeah. Well, the Muldoon school, there was 8 kids in that class and 1 teacher. And we was there until we moved to Carey. And then we moved the sheep to Carey, and then when we moved the sheep to Carey, why, we'd go to the Carey School. And it was neat then. They still had their little livery stable out there, because some of the kids rode horses to school. I skied to school quite a bit. And that's where my love of the snow machine started, I think. When I seen a self-propelled pair of skis, I went crazy. That was a lot, that was fun then. The old garlic stunt, yeah, that was a good one. That was a prank, you might say. A lot of people thought it was a prank, but I just loved garlic. And we'd get checked down at school, so we had to hide the stuff, you know, because some of those guys, old Doc Eldridge's kids, Alan and Poose and those guys, they put garlic in the furnace, and then we'd get out of school for a while, because it stunk like hell, you know. So I hid my garlic in a world globe that hung just above the teacher's desk. And he was always looking for that garlic, and never did find it. By luck. Yeah. And one of the Oh, the worst. Well, I got suckered into it. At that time, I was old enough that I started baling hay. The balers come into focus, and my folks bought a baler, and I got to run the darn thing. And that took a mechanic on the back to tie strings, and a kid like me to drive the tractor. I think I was 8, 9 years old then, 10. And then that graduated into a baler with no mechanic sitting back there tying the knots. It never was tied before by the machine. And my folks had to put up, at that time, if I remember right, 800, 900 ton of hay, 1,000 ton of hay. And I had to bale it all. And when I wasn't baling my dad's hay, if somebody would come and ask if we could bale their hay, there wasn't many balers then, but very few. Why, my dad would let me have the income off of that little job. So after a while, I got to be a kind of a high roller. I don't think it went to my head. I just enjoyed the work and helping people and sharing. And shucks, I had my checking account I opened when I was 11 years old. And I got to drive the Jeep. Of course, I was driving it before then, but when I was 14, I had a driver's license, and I wrote a check out for my first Jeep. And it was a new Jeep. It weren't a used one. But the old guy that sold it to us, or to me, he was Jesser, and he had a little dealership and a service station in Jerome. And I come in there one day, just a kid, and told old Jesser, I said, I want to try out a Jeep. And by golly, that salesman was working in there, he about went crazy, and I heard him, he run and asked Jesser about that, and Jesser said, well, you know who that kid is? And that's Dick Peterson's boy. So, yeah, so anyway, he went back and gave me the Jeep. And I took that Jeep for a couple of weeks, tried her out, and went back and paid for the Jeep. Yeah, things are a little different from now, but it was nice. And I think the thing was around $800, but I can't remember for sure what it was. $800, $900. It was more than my dad could pay for a Jeep, because he wanted one to pull a sheep camp, and he never had the money to buy that Jeep, so he'd pull it with that old two-wheel drive Chevrolet pickup. Stuck in the mud and everything. So we got the Jeep, and the folks put a cab on that Jeep for my dad to go to the desert with and move the sheep camp, and I'd go out and move the sheep camp too with it. But when it came back to the house, we'd have to take the cab off, and that would just torque my dad to death, because it was colder than hell when he left before daylight to go out to sheep, to move the sheep on the Laidlaw Park. It was just it was a fun and sharing life. Yeah, and I rode a tricycle across that desert, and my brother his tricycle, at least twice that I can remember, all the way across it from Kaimana to Malden. Yeah, following the sheep. Yeah, yeah, wow. Yeah. We'd leave here and go out to the desert, or leave by Richfield and go out to the desert and follow those sheep all the way to Malden when we weren't boarded out, because we was boarded out after we started school, of course. I took my Jeep one time into the gymnasium, and that was a hoot. I got dared into it, really. Oh, come on, you know, you can do it. Well, I had a 30-gallon drum of gas and my baling twine and tools in the back of that little old Jeep, and started up those steps in the back. It was a pretty steep climb, and golly, the front wheels was just barely touching the steps. It was about to flip over backwards. When it flip over back, we got to the top step, and they're about to the top step. We're gonna, I don't know what, we're in trouble. I said it's gonna flip over on its back. And pretty quick I said, just open those doors. They said, oh, what? I said, you open them doors before I wreck this Jeep. And they opened the doors, the old gymnasium, both doors, and I drove that Jeep inside and turned it around inside and back on out. And by golly, I knew I was in the world of hurt over that shot, but I never got in trouble over that, and I was most thankful that I didn't. Yes, Mrs. Phillips was my favorite teacher. I think she was my English teacher, and the only teachers, the only teacher in school that I can ever remember, I was a teacher's pet, and I just really liked her, and we got along real good. Yeah. And the band teacher, I had a good band teacher, Ronald. He taught us band, and I played the saxophone, and he had a lot of patience with me because I wasn't musically inclined. But I sure liked it, and I liked the band, and I picked up a saxophone later on in life when I was in the service, and I could remember the fingering, but I couldn't make my lips, and I'd blow that thing, and my lips would tickle, and I couldn't play the saxophone no more, so I hung it up. Yeah, but it was a good experience. And agriculture in school, I sure enjoyed agriculture. And the school the teacher then that was Bob Day, and he got after me one time for being so damn lazy because I kept falling asleep in class. And Bob, he told me later, he said, I was so sorry that I ever said that. I didn't realize you was working all night and going to school all day. Yeah, on that damn hay-baler. But he was sure a good neighbor. Well, my buddy was Max Park. We called him Old Puck. I don't know how he got that name. And Leo Coates, his nickname was Gooseneck. Larry Severson came into the picture, and he came here and stayed with Ross Peck. Ross Peck took care of the family. There's some tragedy hit him, I never knew what. So him and his brother stayed in Carey, and Larry, he became really good buddies and part of our little group. Well, I remember a lot of jackrabbit shooting. We all had 22s, and the ones that didn't shared with the ones that did. And I remember we'd get in between the big haystacks we had around. There's a lot of livestock then here. And my folks' place was really big stacks. So we'd get the Jeep on one end and somebody on the other end, and then we would shoot those rabbits. And how anybody or nobody got shot is beyond anybody. I got a bullet hole through my cap one day, through my hat, my old felt hat. And I nearly run over somebody because he was laying in the snow, and I run right up the track, and he was laying in the track shooting a rock shot, or shooting at a jackrabbit that we was chasing with the Jeep. I mean, if you can get the picture, it was nearly a wreck all the time. But geez, we had a ball, and we just had a ball as kids. Yeah. Well, my first job in life was to an obligation to my country, and it stuck with me really tight. It was probably because of World War II, and my friends. Quentin Dilworth was one of them. Was a kid or a man that I really looked up to, and he helped the folks in the sheep. And when he went off to service and come back, and it was quite a sensation. And the old radio that we had a big long 6-volt battery in it. It was a dry cell battery, and they were expensive. So you could only turn that thing on when the news was on, so we knew how the war was going. And so anyway, the first thing I did was join the Army, join the paratroops, because I and Max Park, because they said that's where the action is, that's where the girls are. And all you got to do is jump out of an airplane once a month for $50 extra pay. And the girls was lined up at the gate for you. Well, that became quite a story. When I got to Kentucky, I see them jumping out of airplanes, and I'm going, oh man, what did I didn't realize the full extent of a paratrooper, but I got the facts pretty fast. And the pay wasn't $50. It was $37.50 a month for jumping out of the airplane. And usually it was really a strictly disciplined company and part of the service. So the paydays, we usually got a payday and had a payday parade, and then we was restricted to the barracks. Like the old first sergeant said, nobody ain't going no place, you know. And just for honerness and teach us discipline, that's one of the things we got. And then when we got to jump school, why, that was something else, because they taught you, we were just a class after not having to pack your own parachute. I don't know if we could have ever trusted ourselves to pack our own chute. But that was really you never stopped running. If you stood still, you was running. And even in the chow line. And when you shaved, you didn't shave with electric razor, you shaved with a straight edge. And your face got so sore that you couldn't hardly touch it. But it was clean, I'll tell you. And they hung you, I lost an inch and an inch and a quarter, inch and a half in my height, because they'd tie you up with those straps and hang you to learn you how to guide the parachute after it opened. Hopefully it opened. I streamered down once, and I heard him yelling, old Jumping Valent, the old first sergeant, and he was yelling at me, and I passed him like a whiz, you know, falling, and I reached down and I pulled that reserve chute, and it opened just before I hit the ground. And another time, you're supposed to leave a little time between you when you jump out of those airplanes, and we all get a little hurried, and this one kid jumped out and landed right on top of my chute when my chute opened. And the chutes at that time, the prop blast from the airplane would turn you. You'd see the tail go right over the top of your head, and it was like you could reach up and touch it, I'm sure. But if you broke your position, why, you'd get really jarred, because that thing opened 3 seconds after you left that airplane. The prop blast actually had opened that parachute. And so if you wasn't in perfect position, the old steel pot would ring around your head, and you'd see stars. Even if you had a good position, you'd see stars. It was a sudden stop. And then, of course, they done away with that parachute. We got another parachute that would open slower. But I might say, when that kid jumped out on top of my parachute, I was bouncing like he was on the end of a rubber ball. And I realized then what had happened. That he was climbing with all his might, with his life, trying to get a hold of that silk to hang on. But you can't hang on to that silk. You can't grab it when it's full of air. It's too slick. So he'd fall below me, and then guess what? My chute collapsed. So I was trying to grab silk and do anything, but you couldn't grab it. But luck was habit, just before we hit the ground, our chute separated. And both of us ended up not hurt. Thankfully, it was a scary experience. Yeah. Then when I got back out of the service, the first thing I had to do was pick a wife. Yeah. And I wanted a girl from a big family, and one that I knew how to work. Because that was important.
Sure.
And so we got married, and we bought the little place that we're speaking at today. And we were married 24 years and broke up, sad to say. And all I ever wanted to do in life was farm, and that's what we did, and still do. I have a hard time not doing anything to this day. But we got us a little place in Gooding, and a lot of rocks. I picked rocks, and the biggest thing I hated to do in life was pick rocks. But that's about all I could do when I got older. And I needed the exercise, because I didn't want to grow up with a big belly. I just had to stay trim and stay in shape and work. And build a most beautiful little place down in Gooding. And just by accident, from all the work, made a tremendous difference with the neighbors. And I ended up mighty proud of that, and still am. So now I'm back in the sheep business. I got 6 head of sheep now to feed, and 5 acres of grass to mow. Yeah, the neighbors all wanted to know what I was doing, building a park or a golf course. And they were serious in their thoughts, and I was just busy picking rock and planting more grass. But it was fun, and we're still having fun down there. We love Gooding, and we're out of the snow, and Donna and I, and we're looking forward to selling our place here and moving down there, a little closer to doctors. And
Sure.
yeah, it's just, you get old, never give up. Yeah, we've had a few difficult times, but yeah, even dropping out of the airplane. But we never give up, and the chute separated, we both, oh geez, that was scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I've helped a lot of, quite a few kids start farming, and because I had a good life at it. And we got pretty good at that, good enough that damn near it killed myself. But I enjoyed that, but I tell you what, they flew me from in an airplane from Jackson, Montana. That's where it all happened. I run over myself. Well, it was a big thing because I didn't care with that thing how far it flew in the air or what position it was in. Never let loose the handlebars and never let up on the throttle. And somehow I got my head caught underneath the track, and it cut my nose and my face right off. Yeah, and so they all thought I was going to die, and I knew I wouldn't. I wanted to continue the race, but I couldn't figure out what the heck was the matter. I couldn't see where I was going, you know. Well, my face was skint right off. Just peeled my face right down to the skull. And nearly got my eyes and my teeth. But you know, they flew us down to the hospital, the university hospital in Salt Lake, and they took my chart and what are you allergic to and all this, and I said penicillin, and the first thing they done was fed me a penicillin pill. And if my wife would have been right there, right then, I think I'd have been a goner, because I passed out from that. You can't talk, you can't do nothing. It hit me pretty hard. And that was in February 1971, and that spring they had the last snowmobile race of the year at Featherville, Idaho over here, and I was on that damn snow machine. I had so many bandages on my face I could hardly see. I didn't win the race by all means, but by golly, I was there. I'm about out of words and all choked up.
Cool deal.
It's been a fun life. Fun life. So we'll just take that to Larry Peterson in Carey, Idaho. Call me Larry from Carey. That's my nickname.